The Maryland medical examiner has now issued his report on the death of the college basketball star Len Bias. It confirms the worst suspicions. He died of heart failure because he used cocaine. First, here's ABC's Bill Greenwood.
Billions of dollars, sold-out arenas, and the blinding glory that millions crave. When basketball legends step onto the court, they are invincible gods. But when the spotlight fades, behind the velvet curtain of fame, a brutal, silent, and deadly battle truly begins. Today, we will uncover the dark files of 10 NBA superstars, monuments who once stood at the absolute pinnacle, only to throw it all into the abyss for an opponent they could never defeat. Drugs. From a prodigy who collapsed just 48 hours after touching his dream, to great champions who lost their souls in seedy brothels or lay slumped, begging on the cold streets. These are not just heartbreaking tragedies, they are the most brutal wake-up calls about the cost of a downfall. Let's get started. 1. Lamar Odom, collapsing in a brothel over a party gone too far. Lamar Odom once held everything a player could desire: 2 consecutive NBA championships with the Los Angeles Lakers in 2009 and 2010, and the 6th Man of the Year award in 2011. As a highly versatile 6'10" forward, he could pass, rebound, defend, and score with ease. However, behind the glamorous shell of a star was a shattered soul being gnawed away by drugs every single day, fueled by personal tragedies and the massive pressure of public scrutiny. Odom's downward spiral began early, with 2 suspensions for violating marijuana regulations in 2001 and 2002. What seemed to be just recreational fun silently morphed into a deadly threat named cocaine and other stimulants. Odom's craving for drugs was so immense that he would defy everything to satisfy his addiction, even resorting to the craziest schemes to fool the league. In his autobiography, Darkness to Light, Odom confessed a shocking dark secret. To pass a doping test and make the U.S. Olympic roster in 2004, he went online and ordered a prosthetic penis. He had his trainer urinate into a bottle, then pumped that clean urine into the fake appendage hidden in his pants to successfully swap the sample right in front of the medical staff. When he married Khloe Kardashian, becoming a familiar face on reality television, shoved him into a suffocating media glasshouse, something Odom later admitted made things significantly worse. His drug use skyrocketed. He constantly lied to his wife, disappearing for days on end in rundown motels to get high with strange women. The drugs corroded his brain, inducing hallucinations and extreme paranoia. In a raw interview, Odom revealed the inside perspective of his addiction. He recounted borrowing a phone from a prostitute he was with, faking a woman's voice to call Khloe, and screaming, "You need to come get him! He's going crazy! He's going to kill himself!" That was the desperate sound of a man completely lost inside his own addiction. The climax of the tragedy hit in October 2015, a moment that made the whole world hold its breath. Odom was found unconscious at a Nevada brothel after consuming a massive amount of cocaine and supplements. The scene was haunting, blood running from his nose and white foam frothing from his mouth. The devastating overdose caused Odom to suffer kidney failure, multiple heart attacks, 12 strokes, and placed him on life support. Doctors even feared that if he survived, he would have permanent brain damage. Fortunately, he pulled through and dubbed himself a walking miracle. Odom described waking up from his coma as the most painful yet healing moment of his life. Even so, the dark shadows surrounding this incident have never entirely cooled off. In 2024, Odom shockingly claimed that he had no memory of taking any drugs the night before his overdose. He felt hurt, ashamed, and believed someone intentionally drugged him. Regardless of the validity of those rumors, the medical reality is undeniable. An exceptional talent nearly lost his life and threw everything away simply because he couldn't conquer the demon growling in his own veins. 2. Spencer Haywood, Illicit, Hallucinations, and a Plot to Assassinate His Coach. Spencer Haywood is not just a basketball legend, he is the man who completely changed NBA history through a groundbreaking lawsuit taken all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the rule banning undergrads from playing. Yet, this great man, who won an Olympic gold medal and made it to the Hall of Fame, had a dark side so horrifying when he got tangled up with drugs. In the late 1970s, as the cocaine wave began sweeping through the league, Haywood quickly became a victim, and his addiction reached its peak of insanity during the 1979 to 1980 season while playing for the Los Angeles Lakers. Unlike those who merely used drugs to party, Haywood was heavily addicted to freebasing cocaine, a pure form of cocaine meant for smoking that delivers an intense high but destroys the nervous system most mercilessly. The addiction was so savage that he frequently smoked cocaine right in his car in the parking lot before games, even sneaking into the bathroom during halftime to satisfy his cravings. Drugs completely eroded the superstar's physical and mental state, turning him into a lingering shadow, frequently arriving late, arguing, or missing crucial practices. The extreme paranoia brought on by cocaine pushed Haywood into one of the most shocking and darkest situations ever recorded in professional sports history. During the 1980 NBA Finals, after constantly falling asleep in practices and playing terribly due to the influence of stimulants, Lakers head coach Paul Westhead made the decision to suspend Haywood and kick him off the team right in the heat of the playoffs. Feeling humiliated and his mind completely out of control due to drug-induced hallucinations, Haywood hatched a crazy idea to assassinate his own coach. In interviews and an autobiography published years later, he admitted a chilling truth that he had contacted his mobster friends back in his hometown of Detroit to plan a hit on Paul Westhead. The plan was meticulously detailed, involving tampering with the coach's car brakes to create a fatal traffic accident to cover up the crime. On that fateful night, Haywood even drove to stalk Westhead's neighborhood, waiting for the right moment for the hitmen to strike. But then, in the final moments before an irreversible crime could take place, Haywood's mother called him. Her voice pierced through the paranoid fog of drugs, snapping him out of his nightmare, and he immediately called off the assassination order. The Lakers won the championship that year thanks to the brilliance of Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But Haywood did not get to stand on the podium. He was ostracized, his career sliding into darkness before hitting rock bottom and finding his way to rehab centers. Although he later conquered his inner demon and became an inspirational speaker helping others. The story of a legend who nearly became the mastermind of a murder over a rock of cocaine remains the most terrifying hidden corner, proving how quickly drugs can turn a great human being into a monster. 3. Chris Herren, clinically dead for 30 seconds from a fatal injection. Chris Herren's story is a chilling testament to how drastically drugs can shatter a perfect script, shifting from a sports tragedy to an almost medically unbelievable phenomenon. Born in Fall River, Massachusetts, Herren was a true high school basketball legend, scoring over 2,000 points and being named a McDonald's All-American in 1994. He rose to the spotlight, appearing on the cover of the prestigious Sports Illustrated magazine before even playing a single college basketball game. Everyone called him the Golden Boy of Massachusetts, the one destined to wear the traditional green jersey of his hometown team. However, running parallel to that brilliant glory was the rise of a demon. Herren had his first drink at age 14 and tried cocaine when he entered Boston College. He told himself about that first snort. I promised myself it would just be this one time. Nobody could have guessed that single time would drag out into 14 grueling years of a no-way-out struggle. Despite repeatedly failing drug tests at Boston College and Fresno State, his natural talent still got Herren drafted by the Denver Nuggets in the 1999 NBA draft before being traded to his hometown Boston Celtics in 2000. Playing for the Celtics should have been the most beautiful dream, but for Herren, it was the beginning of hell. When he received the call from head coach Rick Pitino, he sobbed uncontrollably, not out of happiness, but out of sheer terror. By then, he was so sick that he panicked at the thought of embarrassing his entire hometown. Herren's addiction had transitioned from cocaine to OxyContin, a highly addictive and powerful painkiller. The frequency of his use was so horrific that the initial 40 milligram pill quickly escalated to 1,600 milliliters a day, costing him up to $20,000 a month. There was an incredibly shocking secret that regularly took place that season. Herren would often be fully dressed in his Celtics warm-up gear, standing outside the arena in the freezing rain and snow, anxiously waiting for his drug dealer to drop off pills right before tip-off. Without the drugs, he would go into severe withdrawals, sweating profusely, and be completely unable to step on the court to play. Waived by the Celtics, after just one season, Herren went to Europe to play and quickly spiraled down to the absolute bottom of despair when he started using heroin. Injections became a daily habit, entirely blinding the reasoning and humanity of a person. The darkest peak was when he shot up heroin right before his own mother's funeral, an act he later admitted made him feel utterly disgusted with himself. He repeatedly overdosed, clinging to life by a thread time and time again. And then the fateful moment struck in 2008 when he got high on heroin and crashed his car head-on into a utility pole. That horrific accident left Herren clinically dead for 30 full seconds. Waking up in the hospital, he saw his wife holding their newborn child. She bitterly declared, "Chris, I can't even tell you how many times you've broken my heart, but this is the last time I'm letting you break theirs." That threat to leave, along with the help of former star Chris Mullin, became the lifeline that pulled Herren back from the dead. Maintaining his sobriety since August 1st, 2008, the man who was legally dead years ago now travels everywhere, speaking to over 1 million students and citizens to tell his life story, using his own drug scars to salvage other lost souls. 4. Roy Tarpley, losing a career to extreme temptation. From Chris Herren's miraculous tale of redemption, we move to one of the most easily avoidable, yet ultimately dead-end tragedies in NBA history, Roy Tarpley. Selected by the Dallas Mavericks as the 7th overall pick in the 1986 NBA draft, Tarpley was part of basketball's most infamous draft class, the generation ruined by the drug curse, which included Len Bias, Chris Washburn, and William Bedford. But unlike those who faded before they could even shine, Tarpley was an absolute monster on the court. He won the 6th Man of the Year award, averaging 17.1 points and 15.0 rebounds during his prime 81-game stretch in the 1987-88 season. He helped Dallas march straight to the Western Conference Finals and pushed the series to a grueling Game 7 against the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers. The potential of a Hall of Fame legend was written on his every stride. However, darkness began to swallow his glory when Tarpley let himself slide into deadly temptations. Tarpley publicly admitted to a severe cocaine and alcohol addiction for the first time in October 1987, and that was when the hellish loop began. His substance abuse habit didn't just stop at impulsive partying, it became a chronic dependency, completely destroying the discipline of a professional athlete. The most bitter reality was his helplessness against the addiction. Despite knowing the consequences, he still failed routine drug tests, missed countless practices unexcused, continually got involved in DUI arrests, and blew through every court-mandated rehab stint. He himself once bitterly confessed to a reporter, "My problem is that I am a cocaine addict. My biggest problem is I let Roy do whatever Roy wanted to do." Tarpley's frequency of violations was so staggering that he missed over 400 NBA games due to suspensions, a number nearly 50% larger than the total number of games he actually played. Let this bitter truth sink in. The number of games he was banned for drugs and alcohol exceeded the number of games he actually played. Even though the league was incredibly lenient in giving him chances to rebuild his life, and the Dallas Mavericks even handed him a 6-year, $20 million contract, Tarpley threw it all away with his own hands, simply because he couldn't curb his craving for alcohol and violated the terms of his aftercare program. He received a lifetime ban from the NBA in December 1995. The Mavericks owner at the time exclaimed in despair, "This is the final chapter. The book is closed." Years of absolute depravity had entirely drained the former star's vitality. Tarpley passed away in January 2015 and at the age of 50, and Mavericks representatives were informed that the cause of death was liver failure, a direct fallout from his years of substance abuse. A career that could have naturally entered the pantheon of legends ultimately became a profoundly heartbreaking cautionary tale. 5. John Lucas, hitting rock bottom at the dark spots. Drafted number 1 overall by the Houston Rockets in the 1976 NBA draft, John Lucas once carried the expectations of becoming one of the greatest playmaking guards in league history. However, his promising career was quickly overshadowed by the wave of drugs sweeping through the NBA in the late 70s and early 80s. Unlike players who only used occasionally to party, Lucas became a heavy addict, a true slave to cocaine and later crack cocaine. At the peak of his addiction, drugs were no longer just a hobby, but the sole dictator of Lucas's schedule. The frequency of his use skyrocketed out of control. He had a shocking habit of regularly snorting long lines of cocaine right in the arena restrooms before tip-off, and occasionally taking another hit during halftime just to maintain the artificial high. Instead of physically recovering after grueling games, Lucas would vanish into the night. He drove aimlessly through slums, gang hotspots, and the city's most dangerous drug dens to satisfy his cravings. All athletic discipline was shattered as he continually swapped urine samples, missed crucial practices, and stepped onto the court with bloodshot eyes, his body exhausted from sleep deprivation. The shocking secret and the darkest rock-bottom moment of John Lucas's life hit in mid-March 1986. At the time, he was playing incredibly well for the Houston Rockets, but he suddenly evaporated without a trace right before a major game. The entire coaching staff and his teammates had to search for him in desperation. Days later, Lucas was found waking up in a crack house, a run-down, foul-smelling abandoned house exclusively used for smoking crack, right in downtown Houston. The scene was pitiful and tragic. The NBA star was wearing an expensive tailored suit covered in filth, shoeless with no socks, his bare feet bleeding, curled up on a trash-filled floor in a state of temporary amnesia. He had absolutely no memory of how he drifted to that den when his expensive shoes were stripped from him, or how much crack he had smoked into his lungs during his disappearance. That horrific and humiliating incident led to the Rockets firing Lucas immediately. It took a grueling journey of bouncing in and out of rehab centers 5 times, along with countless agonizing nights fighting hallucinations, for John Lucas to finally strangle the demon inside him. Although his playing career was heavily ruined, Lucas's story radiated a brilliant halo at its conclusion. From a delirious junkie slumped in the slums, he stood up and founded a rehabilitation center dedicated strictly to athletes. Using his own bleeding scars, Lucas became a savior, pulling countless next-generation players from the Grim Reaper's scythe of drugs, turning his own dark tragedy into a miracle of salvation for hundreds of lost souls. 6th, O.J. Mayo, the NBA's record-breaking suspension. From a prodigy expected to change the entire league to an incredibly quiet and humiliating end, O.J. Mayo's story is a deeply haunting low note. Selected 3rd overall in the 2008 NBA draft, Mayo was once hailed by pundits as the next LeBron James before he even set foot on professional hardwood. His rookie season with the Memphis Grizzlies was utterly explosive. He started every game, averaged 18.5 points, and impressively finished 2nd in the prestigious Rookie of the Year voting. That should have been the perfect launch pad for a great career, but no one expected it to be his only peak before the glory slowly faded, and he began his drifting days from Memphis to Dallas and then Milwaukee. Behind his baffling decline on the court were massive psychological dark clouds and the silent destruction of stimulants. Mayo was born and raised in a highly complex environment where constant family tragedies surrounded and suffocated his mind. His father was sentenced to over 10 years in prison for possessing and distributing crack cocaine. His brother was sent to a juvenile detention center, while his closest friends were either entangled with the law or brutally murdered on the streets. Overwhelmed and completely broken by that chain of tragic events, Mayo turned to drugs as his only escape to numb the pain of reality. Although the league never officially disclosed exactly what drugs brought him down, a 2-year suspension implicitly confirmed they had to be heavy drugs of abuse, which could range from cocaine to deadly opiates. Mayo himself later confessed to constantly smoking marijuana and particularly severely abusing prescription painkillers. Instead of facing the pressure, he retreated into dark rooms, drowning himself in pills to paralyze his body and hide from the brutal reality. And then, on July 1, 2016, the league's death knell struck. Mayo officially received an expulsion from the NBA for violating the anti-drug policy, becoming the player with the longest drug-related ban in the entire history of the league. The moment he heard that devastating news, Mayo completely collapsed, crying hysterically, and his first reflex was to grab his phone and call his mother. In an incredibly candid interview with Sports Illustrated, he bitterly admitted how far into the depths of despair he had fallen. To have basketball taken away was the closest thing to jail I could experience. Since I was 6 or 7, I've always had a basketball season. That was the lowest point of my entire life, the shock of not being in the NBA. All my peers are playing and I'm not because of stupid mistakes. When asked if he should have known better to avoid walking in his father's ruined footsteps, the once prodigy could only bow his head and reply, "Every man writes his own manual. I just made some bad decisions." Even though he was eligible for reinstatement in the 2018-19 season, no NBA team was willing to risk signing him, officially slamming the door on Mayo's career in the United States. A career that should have been so much greater ultimately ended quietly halfway across the globe when he went to China to become an assistant coach for the Liaoning Flying Leopards. 7. Michael Ray Richardson, victim of the white powder era. When talking about the cocaine era that swallowed so many careers in the league, no one represents it more completely and tragically than Michael Ray "Sugar" Richardson. Drafted 4th overall by the New York Knicks in the 1978 NBA draft, Richardson quickly established himself as one of the most elite defensive and playmaking superstars of his time. Across 556 regular season games, he averaged 14.8 points, 7.0 assists, and led the league with 2.6 steals per game. His trophy case was massive, with 4 All-Star appearances, 3 steals titles, the 1979-80 assists crown, and 2 selections to the All-Defensive First Team. Even the legendary Magic Johnson had to express absolute admiration. When I was playing, the only player I liked watching more than anyone else was Sugar Ray Richardson. When I saw him, I saw a smaller version of myself. That was a caliber few could ever reach. One that should have reserved him an honorable spot in the Hall of Fame, instead of turning his name into a warning label for countless future generations. However, the glitzy lights of New York and the toxic culture of the 80s quickly pushed Richardson into the abyss. He shared that when he first moved to New York, mixing with various crowds and partying all night long led him to experiment with drugs. In an era where cocaine was marketed as a trendy miracle drug with no side effects that could make a person feel like Superman, Richardson let his guard down completely. He once bitterly admitted the truth about this demon. The whole thing about cocaine is it's not a physical addiction, it's a mental addiction. Because as long as you don't do it, you don't want it. But once you start doing it, you can't stop. The most shocking hidden detail about the addiction habits of Richardson and players of that era was the terrifying openness of it right on the court. Richardson recounted a real situation that reflected the depravity of that era. Right during on-court warm-ups, players from rival teams would approach each other and whisper, "Hey man, I've got what you're looking for. Let's get together when the game is over." With just a fleeting handshake before tip-off, a drug deal was seamlessly orchestrated right in front of tens of thousands of fans. The craving for nose candy turned a premier star into a man who lost his mind, throwing away his entire great career. After multiple relapses, the death sentence for Richardson's career arrived as an inevitable consequence. The first time, the second time, and then the third time. On February 25, 1986, the shockwave bomb detonated when NBA Commissioner David Stern announced a lifetime ban for Richardson after he tested positive for cocaine for the 3rd time in just 3 seasons. He became the first active player to be booted from the NBA under the terms of the anti-drug agreement. The darkest moment of his life was when an NBA official was waiting at the airport, coldly informing him that the league's doors were permanently closed to him. Even though he was reinstated in 1988, Richardson chose never to return to the NBA, opting instead to play professionally in Europe until he was almost 47 years old. He passed away in November 2025 at the age of 70, leaving behind a legacy full of regrets but also pride, as he went from a banned player to a man who stood up, took accountability, successfully rehabilitated, and became a pillar of his community. He constantly reminded himself of that ruthless decision from the past, asserting that David Stern himself had helped save his life from the scythe of cocaine. 8. Keon Clark never stepped on the court sober. When bringing up addictive substances that destroy players, people immediately think of synthetic drugs or cocaine, but reality has proven that alcohol can ruin careers just as ruthlessly. and Keon Clark's story is the most chilling proof of that. Selected 13th overall in the NBA draft after a stellar stint at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Clark once carried the expectations of becoming a solid anchor in the toughest basketball league on the planet. He possessed an ideal physique with an incredibly long wingspan, extraordinary leaping ability, and a host of highly impressive raw athletic traits. Yet, behind the facade of a promising athlete, he hid a dark secret from almost everyone around him. Clark later admitted a bitter truth that he started drowning in alcohol as far back as high school. But the most shocking secret, the one that left the entire fan base and sports world with their jaws dropped when it was exposed, was his unprecedented declaration. Clark had never played a single NBA game completely sober. Not a single game. The frequency of his addiction reached a peak of absolute madness and indiscipline right in the professional sports environment. Imagine an unbelievable yet entirely real scenario. While his teammates were intensely listening to the coach dictate tactics during halftime of actual NBA games, Clark was secretly chugging bourbon, vodka, or any alcoholic beverage he could grab in the locker room. By some miraculous stroke, he managed to bypass most of his teammates, the coaching staff, and even the high-ranking front office executives without raising any suspicion. It was this self-destructive habit that kept Clark's career from ever taking off. He drifted through 5 different teams in just 6 short NBA seasons, gradually being demoted to a bench warmer as his on-court performance became increasingly erratic and unreliable. Despite always playing drunk, Clark still averaged fairly impressive numbers with 8.2 points, 5.9 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per game. Those stats left fans heartbroken, wondering, if he had stayed sober, just how great and dominant could this physical monster have become? The price for those years drowning in alcohol eventually caught up to him. In 2006, Clark was supposed to appear in court in Illinois to face a series of serious weapons and drug charges, but he decided to flee. The escape failed miserably when U.S. Marshals captured him as he was sneaking onto a bus in Houston, Texas, and subsequently extradited him. At his hearing, standing before the judge, Clark broke down and confessed to everything. His drinking habits since high school, playing games under the influence of alcohol, and all his lies. His secret is considered one of the most astonishing open secrets the NBA has ever witnessed, a tragedy hidden in plain sight of tens of thousands of fans throughout an entire career. 9. Delonte West, from millionaire to homeless. If Lamar Odom's story is about surviving and crossing the abyss, Delonte West's tragedy is a cruel loop of being trapped in the absolute depths of despair time and time again. Having had a distinguished career spanning 8 seasons in the NBA, West earned over $16 million and established himself as an incredibly reliable guard. The peak of his career was tied to his years alongside LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers, helping the team march straight to the 2009 Eastern Conference Finals. Before that, he also had an explosive 2006-07 season with the Boston Celtics, averaging 12.2 points and 4.4 assists per game. However, that brilliant career and massive fortune quickly evaporated, giving way to one of the most heartbreaking tales of psychological struggle and addiction in American sports history. West's collapse stemmed from dark psychological clouds when he was officially diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2008. Although he repeatedly disputed this diagnosis and claimed he was only depressed due to the immense pressure of professional sports, reality proved otherwise. West's darkest period wasn't just a battle with his mental health, but was fueled by the most malicious and shocking rumors in the NBA at the time, regarding his personal life and a superstar teammate's family. The acts of public opinion completely crushed the fragile defenses in West's mind, pushing him to drugs and addictive substances to escape reality. From a multimillionaire adored by thousands, he blew through his entire $16 million and became a penniless homeless man. In 2016, photos of a ragged West wandering and begging on the streets of Maryland sent shockwaves across the globe. The frequency and habits of West's addiction were so horrific that he couldn't sustain a single ray of hope, even when a helping hand was offered. In 2020, when photos of him holding a sign begging for money went viral again, billionaire Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, personally drove to pick him up from the streets and paid for his entire rehab treatment. Just when people thought West had truly turned his life around, after finding a job at the very same rehab facility in early 2021, drugs didn't easily let go of their prey. Cuban once sadly shared, "We thought we got him to turn the corner, but he disappeared again." The thirst for drugs threw West back onto the pavement in July 2022, where he was once again seen begging for spare change to feed his addiction and was subsequently arrested for petty crimes later that year. The devastation of drugs consistently brought West to death's door. In 2024, police found him unconscious from an overdose. Though he luckily survived, his condition grew increasingly fragile. By November 2025, he was once again found unconscious and completely breathless on the streets, only starting to breathe on his own when Fairfax County police paramedics arrived in time to resuscitate him. Mental illness and drugs are a deadly trap that people can't just simply wish away. Recently, even though West shared a hopeful milestone of 100 days sober, fans always carry a lingering fear of a repeated relapse for a man who lost everything since the day he walked away from the Orange Ball. 10. Len Bias, the 48-hour tragedy after a historic draft. Closing out this list is not a long sliding downward spiral, but rather a catastrophic and instantaneous crash, like the script of the most classic tragic movie ever written about a short-lived legend. Len Bias, a 22-year-old drafted second overall by the Boston Celtics in the 1986 NBA draft, died of cardiac arrhythmia from a cocaine overdose exactly 2 days after that life-changing moment. While playing in college, Bias was an unstoppable force, an All-American, leading the Atlantic Coast Conference in scoring, a two-time ACC Player of the Year, and he even outscored Michael Jordan in a head-to-head matchup. To the experts at the time, he was not just a hope, he was the ultimate hope, an explosive superstar expected to become Jordan's greatest rival. The tragedy struck in the early hours of June 19, 1986, barely 48 hours after Bias put on the green Celtics hat. The great franchise had just won a championship and wanted to use him to extend their dynasty. The most haunting hidden corner and shocking detail in this entire story is the conclusion from the autopsy. Bias was absolutely not a long-term drug addict and showed no signs of cardiovascular disease. Furthermore, in the hours before his collapse, he hadn't consumed a drop of alcohol or used any other drugs. The medical community believes a terrifying theory. He died the very first time, or one of the rare first times, he ever tried the drug. On that fateful night, to celebrate his life-altering contract, Bias gathered with a few teammates at a University of Maryland dorm room. According to historical reports and the shocking 911 audio tape from the time, a friend brought in a batch of incredibly high-purity cocaine. After taking a snort, Bias suddenly collapsed to the floor, suffered severe seizures, and went into cardiac arrhythmia. The desperate 911 call rang out at 6:30 a.m. with a panicked voice screaming, "This is Len Bias, you have to get him back to life." Despite being rushed to Leland Memorial Hospital for emergency care, all efforts were in vain, and he was officially pronounced dead at 8:55 a.m. He departed forever without ever playing a single full minute on a professional NBA court. Bias's death created a seismic shockwave far beyond the realm of sports, shaking the very legal system of the United States. It became the catalyst for the national war on drugs, leading President Ronald Reagan to sign the Anti-Drug Abuse Act in October 1986. This act, also known as the Len Bias Law, mandated a minimum 20-year and maximum life prison sentence for any individual distributing drugs that resulted in death or serious injury to others. All because of one night of partying, a split-second bad decision, a great legend faded away, leaving the Boston Celtics with a grueling 21-year curse of never touching the championship trophy. Drugs spare no one, not even those who seem to hold the world in the palms of their hand. Among the 10 tragedies we've just uncovered, which story left you feeling the most heartbroken and haunted? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next files. Goodbye, and see you next time.